Under the burning sun of Burkina Faso, a man in prison clothing grips a shovel and steps into a drainage canal filled with mud, plastic, and stagnant water. He is not standing behind concrete walls. He is working beside a road used by families, clearing a path for rainwater before the next storm arrives. The question is not only what crime brought him here. The deeper question is what kind of man he may become when this work is finished. For generations, many societies have treated prison as a place where time simply disappears. A person enters, loses years behind locked doors, and eventually returns to the same poverty, anger, isolation, or lack of opportunity that helped shape his earlier choices. The sentence may end, but the conditions that produce the crime often remain. That is why one question continues to follow every justice system. Is prison meant only to punish the past, or should it also prepare a human being for the future? In Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore is supporting an approach that challenges the old image of incarceration. Prisoners with good conduct and the physical ability to work may be selected for public service outside prison walls. They can clear drainage channels, plant trees, protect the environment, support agricultural production, and take part in local development projects. Their labor is intended to serve communities while giving them discipline, practical experience, and a visible reason to change. This is not a simple story about men being sent to perform hard labor. It is a story about responsibility, dignity, public safety, and the meaning of rehabilitation. Supporters see a path from punishment to usefulness. Critics see questions about consent, fairness, safety, and the risk of exploitation. Both sides deserve to be heard because our policy should not be judged by its slogans, but by the conditions it creates and the lives it changes. By the end of this video, we will examine how the program works, why Traore connects prison reform with national development, what separates community service from forced labor, and what other African nations may learn from this experiment. We will also confront the hardest question. Can a person who once harmed society become one of the people who rebuild it? If you believe Africa's most important stories deserve examination rather than quick judgment, subscribe and stay with us. Share your thoughts and tell us where you are watching from, because every thoughtful comment helps carry Africa's voice further. The first principle behind this reform is direct but demanding. Prison should not be the end of a human life. Society has the right to impose consequences, protect victims, and restrain dangerous behavior. Yet, punishment alone cannot guarantee that a person will return as a safer neighbor. One day, most prisoners will walk through the gate again. The real test of a correctional system begins on that day. The greatest weakness of many prison systems is not that they fail to lock people away. It is that they often fail to prepare them for the day those prison gates finally open. Across the world, millions of men complete their sentences every year, yet many return to the same streets without new skills, without meaningful work, and without a renewed sense of purpose. When that happens, society pays the price a second time. Families suffer again, communities lose confidence, and the cycle of crime continues almost exactly where it began. Captain Ibrahim Traore has argued that this cycle should not be accepted as inevitable. During visits to correctional facilities, he has repeatedly emphasized that prison should become a place of learning rather than a destination of hopelessness. According to this philosophy, punishment remains necessary because laws must be respected. However, punishment alone cannot transform a person's character. Transformation begins when individuals accept responsibility, contribute to something larger than themselves, and discover that they still possess value despite the mistakes of their past. That philosophy is gradually taking shape through Burkina Faso's community service program. Instead of allowing selected inmates to spend every day inside prison compounds, authorities assign those with good conduct and the physical ability to work to carefully supervised public projects. Their tasks include clearing blocked drainage canals before the rainy season, planting thousands of trees to combat environmental degradation, cleaning public spaces, supporting agricultural production, and participating in local development initiatives that directly benefit surrounding communities. One of the most powerful incentives within the program is its sentence reduction policy. Every month successfully completed under the community service system can be credited as 3 months of sentence reduction for eligible participants. This is far more than a reward for physical labor. It creates a clear connection between personal responsibility and personal freedom. Every tree planted, every drainage canal cleaned, and every day spent working honestly becomes another step toward returning home. The impact of these projects is already visible in places such as Tenkodogo, where prisoners have helped remove accumulated sand, plastic waste, and vegetation blocking urban drainage systems. At the same time, thousands of young trees have been planted as part of environmental restoration efforts. These projects are not symbolic gestures designed only for television cameras. They address practical problems that affect ordinary citizens every rainy season, reducing flood risks, improving sanitation, and helping create healthier neighborhoods for families across the community. For the prisoners themselves, however, the transformation goes far beyond the visible work. The greatest change often takes place in the mind rather than in the hands. A prison sentence can gradually strip away confidence, self-respect, and hope. Days become repetitive, decisions are made by others, and many inmates begin to believe they have nothing meaningful left to offer society. Community service challenges that belief by replacing idleness with responsibility. One inmate participating in the program explained that spending every day inside a crowded prison cell created constant stress and physical discomfort. Being allowed to leave the prison under supervision, walk through the city, and contribute to real projects gave him something he had not experienced for a long time: the feeling that his work mattered. Cleaning drainage canals may not appear glamorous, but when families can safely walk the streets after heavy rain, because of that effort, the worker begins to understand that he is solving problems rather than creating them. This psychological shift is one of the strongest arguments supporting rehabilitation through labor. Responsibility cannot simply be taught through lectures. It develops through action. Every completed assignment demands punctuality, discipline, cooperation, and accountability. These habits may appear ordinary, yet they are often the same qualities employers expect and communities depend upon. Instead of leaving prison with only memories of confinement, participants live with practical experience, work routines, and a stronger belief that they can contribute honestly to society. Many international studies on prisoner rehabilitation suggest that education, vocational training, and structured work programs can reduce the likelihood of reoffending when they are combined with continued support after release. Employment, family stability, and community-based acceptance remain critical factors. But meaningful work during incarceration often becomes the first step toward rebuilding a lawful life. Burkina Faso's experiment reflects this broader principle by connecting rehabilitation directly to visible public service. Yet this is also where the debate becomes far more complicated. Admirers describe the program as one of Africa's most innovative prison reforms. Critics ask a very different question. When prisoners work outside prison walls, are they truly rebuilding their lives, or are they simply providing inexpensive labor under another name? Is this rehabilitation, or could it become a form of forced labor if proper safeguards disappear? These questions deserve careful examination, because the difference between justice and exploitation is not determined by the shovel in a prisoner's hands. It is determined by the principles guiding the person who placed it there. The strongest criticism of Burkina Faso's community service program comes from one fundamental concern. Does meaningful work remain rehabilitation if the people performing it are prisoners around the world? This question has divided legal experts, human rights organizations, and governments for decades. Some observers worry that any labor performed by incarcerated people carries the risk of coercion. Others argue that refusing to provide prisoners with opportunities to work, learn, and contribute leaves them less prepared for life after release. The truth is more complex than either position alone. Critics often begin with the issue of consent. A prisoner cannot enjoy the same freedom of choice as someone living outside prison walls. If participation in a work program brings earlier release, some argue that the decision to participate may not be entirely voluntary. Others raise concerns about workplace safety, independent oversight, fair treatment, and whether prisoners have access to meaningful ways to report abuse if problems arise. These questions deserve careful attention, because any rehabilitation program must first protect the dignity and basic rights of every participant. Supporters of Burkina Faso's policy respond by pointing to an important distinction. The projects are designed primarily to benefit the public rather than generate profits for private corporations. Prisoners participating in community service, clean drainage systems that reduce flooding, plant trees that improve the environment, and assist agricultural activities intended to strengthen local food production. Instead of creating wealth for private shareholders, supporters argue that the labor produces visible improvements for neighborhoods where ordinary citizens live. International standards also suggest that the existence of prison labor alone is not enough to determine whether a program respects human rights. The more important questions concern the conditions surrounding that labor. Are prisoners treated with dignity? Are they protected from abuse? Do they gain practical skills that increase their chances of finding employment after release? Are they contributing to public welfare rather than becoming a source of exploitation? These standards encourage governments to judge correctional work by its purpose, supervision, and outcomes, rather than by the simple fact that labor exists. Looking beyond Burkina Faso reveals that every correctional system struggles with the same challenge. Norway invests heavily in education, vocational training, and humane living conditions to prepare inmates for successful reintegration. Parts of the United States have long faced debate over prison labor compensation and the relationship between correctional institutions and private industry. Burkina Faso is attempting a different path by connecting rehabilitation directly with national development. Whether this model succeeds will depend not only on good intentions, but also on transparent oversight, measurable results, and continued respect for human dignity. In the end, the real measure of justice is not how difficult the work appears, but whether it helps transform lives while protecting the rights of every person involved. If Burkina Faso's community service program represents a practical reform, then Ibrahim Traore represents the philosophy behind it. The drainage canals, newly planted trees, and agricultural fields are only the visible results. The deeper transformation lies in a different understanding of what justice should accomplish, rather than treating prison as a place where people simply wait for their sentences to expire. Traore has repeatedly argued that correctional institutions should prepare individuals to become productive citizens once again. Whether history ultimately judges this vision as successful or not, it has already changed the conversation surrounding prison reform in Burkina Faso. At the center of Traore's approach is a simple but powerful belief. A nation cannot become stronger if it permanently writes off every citizen who has made serious mistakes. Accountability remains essential because crimes have victims and laws exist to protect society. Yet once responsibility has been established, the next question becomes equally important. What kind of person will leave prison in 5 years or 10 years? If the answer is someone with no skills, no discipline, and no hope, then society may eventually face the same problems all over again. This philosophy also reflects Traore's broader vision of national self-reliance. Since taking office, he has consistently encouraged Burkina Faso to depend more heavily on its own people, resources, and productive capacity. Community service fits naturally within that strategy. Instead of separating prison reform from national development, the two become connected. Prisoners help improve public infrastructure, strengthen environmental protection, support agricultural production, and contribute to projects that benefit local communities. At the same time, they gain practical experience that may help them rebuild their own lives after release. Supporters believe this approach reflects a distinctly African understanding of community responsibility. In many traditional African societies, wrongdoing has often been viewed not only as a violation of law, but also as damage to relationships within the community. Repairing that damage requires more than punishment alone. It requires meaningful contribution, restored trust, and renewed responsibility. Community service therefore becomes more than physical labor. It becomes a visible act of making amends while preparing for reintegration into society. Still, no reform should be measured by inspiring speeches alone. The long-term success of this model will depend on evidence rather than intention. Future generations will ask difficult but necessary questions. Does the program reduce repeat offending? Do former prisoners find stable employment? Are human rights consistently protected? Does society become safer? If these questions can eventually be answered with measurable results, Burkina Faso may offer one of Africa's most influential examples of how justice, rehabilitation, and national development can move forward together instead of following separate paths. If Burkina Faso's experiment proves successful over the coming years, its greatest achievement may not be cleaner streets or healthier crops. Its greatest achievement may be changing the way African nations think about justice itself. For decades, many prison systems across the continent have struggled with overcrowding, limited funding, high rates of repeat offending, and insufficient vocational training. Simply building more prison cells has rarely solved those deeper problems. The more important challenge is preparing people to live differently after they regain their freedom. This is where Burkina Faso's model offers an important lesson. Community service should never become a substitute for justice, nor should it become a source of cheap labor without accountability. Instead, it should function as one part of a broader rehabilitation system that combines responsibility, education, vocational skills, and community acceptance. Prisoners who leave correctional facilities must return with more than a completed sentence. They must return with practical abilities, stronger discipline, and realistic opportunities to build lawful lives. Other African countries considering similar reforms would need to adapt the model to their own circumstances rather than simply copying Burkina Faso. Every nation has different legal systems, economic conditions, and social traditions. However, several principles appear broadly applicable. Participation should be based on transparent eligibility standards. Human dignity must remain protected throughout the program. Independent oversight should monitor safety and fairness. Community projects should address genuine public needs instead of replacing ordinary workers. Finally, rehabilitation should continue after release through employment assistance, vocational certification, and local support networks. The future of this model will also depend on measurable evidence rather than political enthusiasm. Governments should publish reliable data showing how many prisoners participate, how many successfully complete the program, how many obtain employment after release, and whether rates of repeat offending decline over time. Transparent reporting strengthens public confidence and allows successful practices to be improved while weaknesses are corrected. Without clear evidence, even the most promising reform risks becoming little more than an inspiring idea. Perhaps the most important lesson extends far beyond Burkina Faso itself. Every society eventually faces the same difficult question. Should a person's worst mistake define the rest of his life forever? Community service suggests another possibility. It does not erase responsibility for crime, nor does it remove the suffering experienced by victims. Instead, it creates an opportunity for accountability to produce something constructive. A clean drainage canal, a newly planted forest, or a successful harvest cannot erase the past, but they can become the first visible signs that someone has chosen a different future. Sometimes rebuilding a nation begins by giving one broken life the chance to rebuild itself first. As history continues to unfold, no one can say with certainty whether Burkina Faso's community service program will become a lasting model for prison reform or simply one chapter in the country's political journey. Policies can succeed, evolve, or fail depending on leadership, transparency, public trust, and long-term commitment. Yet, even before its final results are known, this initiative has already achieved something remarkable. It has forced people across Africa and beyond to ask a question that many justice systems have avoided for generations. What is the true purpose of prison? For some, the answer will always begin with punishment, obligation to protect innocent people, uphold the law, and ensure that those who commit crimes face meaningful consequences. Victims deserve justice, and no reform should ever ignore the pain caused by criminal acts. Accountability must remain the foundation of every legal system. Without accountability, there can be no trust in justice. But accountability does not have to end with confinement. It can also become the beginning of transformation. A man who once damaged his community may one day help protect it. A prisoner who once broke the law may later plant trees that shelter future generations, clear waterways that protect neighborhoods from flooding, or grow food that supports local families. These actions do not erase past crimes, but they and demonstrate that a human life does not have to remain permanently defined by its darkest moment. Perhaps this is the most powerful message emerging from Burkina Faso today. The country is not merely asking whether prisoners should work. It is asking whether society has the courage to believe that rehabilitation is possible when it is supported by responsibility, discipline, practical skills, and human dignity. That conversation reaches far beyond one nation. It speaks to every country searching for better ways to reduce crime while strengthening communities. Whether one agrees with every aspect of Captain Ibrahim Traore's approach or not, his policies have reopened an important debate about the relationship between justice and national development. For supporters of Pan-Africanism, this represents an opportunity for African nations to develop solutions rooted in their own realities rather than relying exclusively on imported models. As Burkina Faso continues its journey, many across Africa will watch closely to see whether this experiment can inspire a new generation of reforms within the African Union and contribute to an Africa new vision of rehabilitation. The story of Ibrahim Traore is therefore not only about prisons, it is about the possibility that one nation can encourage an entire continent to rethink what it truly means to give people a second chance. If this story has challenged the way you think about justice, rehabilitation, and the future of Africa, let us know your perspective in the comments. Do you believe community service can transform lives? Or should prison remain focused primarily on punishment? Subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful discussions on Pan-African ideas, Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore, Pan-Africanism, the African Union, and the changing future that Ibrahim Traore and many others believe Africa can build together. Thank you for being here and watching our video. Every piece of content on this channel is carefully researched, written, edited, and reviewed by our team to ensure it reflects our own work and editorial approach. We do not rely on automated mass production. Each video presents our perspective on current events related to President Ibrahim Traore and developments across Africa.